Silent Hill 2 never reveals its true ending. It gives you several, and then it pretends that they're all equal. But scattered throughout the game are small inconsistencies. Details that feel ordinary at first, details designed to blend in, things you don't question because they seem natural, things you miss because the game tucks them away instead of pointing at them. Taken on their own, they mean nothing. Taken together, they form a pattern. Even in one of the most famous scenes in the game, there's a detail almost everyone overlooks. It's subtle, easy to dismiss, but when you place it beside everything else, it stops feeling accidental. It's the moment that Silent Hill 2 stops pretending that James is here to be saved. So let's start at the beginning. In probably the most famous bathroom in all of gaming, James doesn't look like someone who's in a good place mentally. His expressions and mannerisms have been discussed 1,000 times, but all anyone ever really agrees on is this: something isn't right. When he delivers the opening monologue, it's quiet and restrained, exhausted even. James isn't just bad at parking and remembering to lock his car here, it's the first real hint. Repercussions for these things become an afterthought when someone doesn't believe tomorrow is coming. If we try to leave the Overlook the way he arrived, James refuses. This is the road I came in on. There's no point in going back. A little further down the path, it happens again. Once you pass through the chain-linked gate, there is no other option for James in his mind. There's no reason to go back. I'm going to look for Mary. This already sets James apart from most Silent Hill protagonists. Harry and Henry are dragged into their nightmares. James walks into his. And no, I don't think the town called him here, or at least not in the way that people usually mean. Whenever James is given an exit, or even gently encouraged to leave, he refuses. It's the only thing he's ever truly firm about.
I'll leave as soon as I'm done here.
Everything else, his memories, his emotions, and even his story about Mary, is vague, uncertain, or fragile. But this isn't. This sentiment doesn't fade either. Late in the game, deep in the labyrinth, there is a line that very few players get to see. After finding Maria dead in the cell, if you backtrack all the way through the labyrinth to the start and attempt to leave, James says, "Even if I turn back now, where would I go? There's no road back and nowhere to run away to." This isn't the words of someone panicking or feeling trapped. James doesn't talk like someone who plans to leave. He talks like someone who can't even imagine where he'd go, even if he did. James didn't just aimlessly wander into Silent Hill. He chose to be here. On the desk in the reception office of Brookhaven Hospital, there's a completely optional document often overlooked. It doesn't mention James, or Angela, or Eddie. It just lists 3 patients, 3 short case summaries, and 3 very different kinds of damage. The first is Jack Davis. He has attempted suicide 3 times in the past for reasons unknown. Although he is normally a model patient who follows doctors' and nurses' orders, he must be watched closely due to his past pattern of sudden and violent suicide attempts. Following this is an entry for Joseph Barkin. His illness seems to be rooted in the fact that he believes he is guilty of causing his daughter's death. His symptoms suggest a psychotic break and paranoid delusions. Normally calm, but has a tendency towards violence when excited. And finally, Joshua Lewis. History of hospitalization, as well as numerous assault, battery, and other violent offenses. He has a strong persecution complex and a tendency to solve things through violence. Extreme caution necessary. On its own, this just looks like creepy flavor text. It's a hospital. Of course there would be patient records. But it's here for a reason. And the longer you sit with it, the stranger it becomes. One patient is defined by violence, one by guilt and delusion, one by repeated attempts at their own life. 3 patterns, 3 kinds of breakdown. And if you've been paying attention to Silent Hill 2's cast at all, those categories should already feel uncomfortably familiar. Let's start with the easiest one to place, the patient who solves everything through violence, Joshua Lewis. The description almost reads like it's trying not to say his name. A strong persecution complex, a tendency to solve things through violence. It's hard not to think of Eddie. From the moment we meet him, Eddie is already trying to normalize what he's done. He's defensive about the body in the next room.
He was like this when I got here.
Later, he makes jokes and even eats pizza in a situation where most people wouldn't even think of food. Violence, to Eddie, is already just another part of the room. And as the game goes on, he stops even pretending otherwise. He doesn't just justify what he does, he starts to enjoy it. When James finally confronts him, Eddie doesn't argue that he's innocent, he argues that he's right.
Eddie, you can't just kill someone because of the way they looked at you.
Oh yeah? Why not?
That question is the entire difference between them. James doesn't just disagree with Eddie, he's disturbed by him. He asks if he's lost his mind.
Eddie, have you gone nuts?
He refuses the logic that turns humiliation into permission. And when James does kill Eddie, his reaction tells you everything you need to know. He doesn't celebrate it, he doesn't justify it, he doesn't even really understand how it's happened. He mourns it. This is not the behavior of someone who sees violence as an answer, and it doesn't look like the behavior of someone who's killed out of anger, spite, or hatred either. Eddie is one possible mirror held up to James, and James rejects it completely. He doesn't want to survive as a villain.
You think it's okay to kill people? You need help, Eddie.
He can't live in Eddie's story, but when another mirror is held up to him, his reaction is very different. Which brings us back to the first entry in that hospital document, the one that talks about someone who has to be watched, not because they're a danger to anyone else, but because they keep turning that danger inward. It's difficult not to think of Angela. Everything about her feels like it's already been worn down. When we first meet her in the graveyard, she's quiet, polite, almost apologetic for taking up space. The next time we see her, she's laying in front of a mirror holding a knife. And what's striking here isn't just the object in her hand, it's the way she talks. At first, there's distance.
Oh, it's you.
Then a kind of brittle confidence.
Are you afraid?
But when she turns away from the mirror and actually has to look at James, something in her shifts. Her voice softens, her posture closes in on itself, and the performance disappears. The barrier of the mirror is no longer protecting her. When Angela leaves the knife behind after stating,
If I kept it, I'm not sure what I might do.
"You can carry this knife for the rest of the game, but you can never use it," which feels intentional, because it isn't really for fighting anything, it's just weight, something heavy the game keeps with you. And behind the scenes, it starts paying attention to how often James looks at it. It's not useful, but it does mean something. Angela becomes another mirror held up to James, and unlike Eddie, this is not something he pushes away. He seems to understand, and his early attempts to challenge Angela weaken as the game goes on, which is why what comes next is so hard to watch. The staircase scene is a scene so devastating, and yet, if it happened in the next room, you'd barely notice. It's not loud or gory, or even on the nose. It's imprinted into the minds of Silent Hill fans for that reason. When Angela confronts James with a difficult truth about being able to save her, James cannot face her. With her point proven, Angela asks for the knife back.
Give me back that knife.
But he refuses, in a quietly defiant way.
No, I won't.
Because he knows what it means. She responds by asking if he plans to use it for himself.
Saving it for yourself?
Me? No, I'd never kill myself.
But these words lack the conviction of someone who believes what they are saying. This is a far cry from how James responded to the suggestion of self-harm earlier in the game, with,
I don't know what you're planning, but there's always another way.
and
No, I'm not like you.
here his words are weaker, more confined to the truth. And then there's the line that changes how you read this whole scene.
It's hot as hell in here.
James doesn't say the room is burning or tell Angela to be careful with the flames. No, because he doesn't see them at all. He only feels the flames. The fire is only there for Angela, and for us. So when Angela responds with,
For me, it's always like this.
for the player, these words hurt, and the fan base has dwelled on their implications for years. But what about James? His reaction is difficult to ignore. She turns to climb the steps up to her fate, the flames surrounding her, and James just watches her go. So if James cannot see the fire, then why does he look that way? Like it's goodbye, like he'll never see her again. Because to him, he understands the intent. They are vastly different in how they got there, but their destination is the same. James is just a few steps behind Angela in his emotional journey. James doesn't see the fire, he sees something far worse, something he recognizes, because he has been carrying it with him this whole time. Once you start seeing James this way, the endings of Silent Hill 2 stop feeling like equal possibilities. They're still there, the game still lets you reach them, but one of them starts to feel closer to the shape of the person we've been following all this time. The in-water ending isn't the most dramatic ending, or visually stimulating. It isn't the most cathartic either, but it does feel the closest to the truth, the one that most closely matches the version of James the game has been subtly showing us. It's not a new decision, it's a realization, an admission of something that's been there all along. Throughout the game, the story James tells himself begins to fall apart. The words on the letter that supposedly brought him to Silent Hill fade away. Then, after a little more time, the letter vanishes entirely, before finally, the envelope too. They existed only as long as James needed them to, and the hospital document told us something important much earlier. The second patient, the one defined by guilt, the one whose mind protects itself by rearranging the truth. That description has always fit James a little too well. And then there's another line, one that almost hurts to hear because of what it means.
Without you, Mary, I've got nothing.
Throughout the game, James isn't moving towards escape, he's moving towards a conclusion. He doesn't turn back, he doesn't look for a way out, he keeps walking, even when every exit is still technically there. In the end, In Water doesn't feel like a sudden turn. It feels like the only ending that doesn't pretend this was ever a story about starting over. Whether you read its details literally or symbolically, the shape of the story stays the same. This is not a man fighting his way out of something. It's a man finally understanding where he's been headed since the beginning. In Water isn't the canon ending, but it is the ending that best fits the James we've been watching. A man who drove to Silent Hill to be in the last place he and his wife were happy together, before the illness, before the hard times. But don't be under any illusions that this ending is romantic. It's not that kind of story. By the time the game ends, none of this feels accidental. The hints are everywhere, in the diary on the hospital roof, in the way James talks about danger, like it doesn't really matter, in the way he leaves his car, in the way he never, ever turns back.
It's just, I guess I really don't care if it's dangerous or not. I'm going to town either way.
Silent Hill 2 is a very quiet and deliberate game. It doesn't explain itself often, and it doesn't treat the player like a fool. So when it does choose to say something, it tends to matter. The notes you find, the lines that sound almost throwaway, the way certain scenes are framed, none of it feels wasted. None of it feels like filler. And when you look at the story through that lens, the endings stop feeling like equal answers to the same question. They start to feel like different ways of avoiding it, all except one.
Now I understand the real reason I came to this town. I wonder, what was I afraid of? Without you, Mary, I've got nothing. Now we can be together.
That's why the staircase scene matters so much, not because of what Angela sees, but because of what James doesn't see and yet understands. He doesn't need to see the flames to know what that moment means, and he doesn't need to say anything out loud. James was never meant to survive, and he never wanted to. The tragedy of Silent Hill 2 isn't what happens to James, it's that by the time the game starts, He's already decided.